and I want to talk today about the chart of Johnny Cash. He was a famous singer, if you didn't know. Really came on the scene in the 1950s, but had quite a long career until the end of his life. And a movie was made about his life called Walk the Line with Joaquin Phoenix and Reese Witherspoon, which I recently rewatched, and it inspired me to make this video about his chart. So I have it pulled up on the screen here, and you can see here in his 12th house, he has what's called a stellium of planets, which is 3 planets or more, kind of all squished together, in the sign of Pisces. And those planets are his Sun at 6 degrees, his Mercury at 6 degrees, and his Mars at 1 degree. And what's actually interesting right off the bat, not only is it all in Pisces, and of course Pisces is the energy of creative expression, imagination, sensing the subtleties of life and being able to bring them through in a creative and imaginative form. But this stellium is also located in the Pisces house, which is, again, related to creativity, imagination, amongst other things. And then he also has a Pisces rising. That is also the ascendant. The way he sort of brings himself out into the world and interfaces with the world is also in this Piscean way. And then this stellium in his chart is opposed Neptune, and Neptune rules Pisces. So I'll get more into the specifics of all of that, but this person was extremely Piscean, extremely sensitive, and extremely creative. And I find it interesting to be talking about his chart at this time because if we look at today's today's transits, there is a lot in Pisces as well. We have Mercury, Jupiter, Neptune, and the Sun all in the sign of Pisces. So I feel like somehow Johnny Cash is speaking to us from the ethers about the energy of Pisces at this time. So going back to his natal Sun, if you look at how close it is to his Mercury in Pisces, it's like 20 what's called minutes. So these are the same degrees of 6, but then you look at the minutes and his Mercury's at 6 degrees 25 minutes and his Sun is at 6 degrees 45 minutes, which is only a difference of 20 minutes. And so what that is called when somebody has 2 planets so close like that, it is called combust. And the idea is that the Sun kind of outshines the Mercury in this instance, and it kind of makes the mercurial function of logic and being rational a little more subdued. And what it does is allows access to a different way of thinking, which has more to do with feeling and intuition. And this is from astrolibrary.com, and they write, if the orb of the Sun-Mercury conjunction is greater than 17 minutes, which his is 20 minutes, is not considered genius, but rather a debilitated intellect. Mercury is considered to be combust because the Sun is burning it up. The mind is not as clear as it should be in order to function at top level. Ancient astrologers said that the mind would be restricted in power. People with this aspect would lack objectivity and have skewed views. This is contrary to the current popular belief that people with Sun conjunct Mercury are somewhat geniuses. The misconception may be caused by confusing genius with creativity. These are 2 different things that can exist apart from each other. People with Sun conjunct Mercury can be extremely creative and gifted in the arts, but that is not the same as mercurial genius. So this is just something that is clear to me in his chart that added to his creative expression, to his ability to sort of sense through his imagination and to access the creative expression that came through in the writing of his music and the singing of his music and the writing of his songs. So if you watch the movie, you can see that he had a very troubled childhood. And one of the ways I'll talk about that. But one of the ways that he sort of escaped, which is very Piscean, was to go fishing. Pisces, water, fish. And he also loved to listen to the radio, listen to music. And he had a conversation in the movie with his older brother, who was more of an intellectual and was studying to be a pastor. And you could see in the movie, it was pointed out the difference between Johnny and his brother. And John recognized that, like, he just didn't have the same way of the drive to kind of learn and that kind of thing. He just preferred to kind of live in this basically kind of alternate universe. So very much a lot of his Piscean energy coming through in that moment of the movie. He had a father who was very basically abusive. And it seemed as if his father were kind of an unfulfilled person. He worked very hard. They lived on a farm. And he seemed to be angry a lot. And he took a lot out on Johnny, his frustration. And then, unfortunately, a tragic accident happened with the older brother, probably when Johnny was about 7 or 8, and the brother died. And the father in the movie was shown basically telling Johnny in a fit of rage that, he basically wished it were Johnny who had passed rather than the older brother. So very difficult relationship with his father that really lasted throughout his entire life. And I wanted to read a little bit because what I just described speaks about sometimes having a sun opposite Neptune in your chart. Because the sun is the symbol not only of your identity, your purpose, your creative self, your willpower, your solar light that you want to shine out into the world, but it's also a symbol of our relationship with our father. It is also the father. So in his chart, to have sun opposite Neptune, Neptune being illusion and delusion and sensitivity, and they're kind of at opposites here with the opposition in the chart. This is a symbol sometimes of people kind of having a father that was hard to get a hold of, hard to grasp. He may not have even been there completely. It can also be sort of an unfulfilled and therefore angry kind of father. And I have something pulled up here from a website called sakurainlove.wordpress.com, and they describe this particular natal aspect as: sometimes you might also see a father-child relationship with these aspects where the father figure is either a victim or a victimizer, or quite possibly both. This is often more so the case with the square and the opposition, which he of course had. It says a Sun-Neptune person can experience their father as being rather slippery or difficult to figure out. Since you develop your sense of self based on this relationship, you also become an unfathomable character. This sense of mystery might be because of unavailability. Many of these fathers can be emotionally absent, sporadically present, or just disappear altogether, walking out on the family. It may also be a father figure that's highly manipulative, prone to deluding and deceiving others, which may or may not be intentional. In this way, the parent is the victimizer, but also the victim. Sun-Neptune people can also have fathers who have suffered a great deal. It can be quite common for those with this aspect to have a father figure who has poor health or who even passes away from some sort of cancer, terminal illness, or other unexpected tragedy. And as a result, the identity that you develop in response to what you saw in your father could also have some tragic or painful feel to it. Even the strongest Sun-Neptune folks are very prone to feeling sorry for themselves, which they may be in denial of. Though the archetype of the sun is heroic and courageous, Neptune's archetype is deeply vulnerable and easily overwhelmed, so your sense of self is a particularly fragile one, as you have an awareness of just how breakable you can be. It's for this reason that many with Sun in aspect to Neptune feel the compulsion to be a chameleon. You might want to escape the self within that feels so defeated, overlooked, or misunderstood by life. This combination represents a will to take on various guises. It's something that can go either way. Neptunians are natural-born artists, which will manifest in different ways depending on the planet in aspect to Neptune. With the Sun touching Neptune, being an artist just feels like an integral part of who you are. And this is something that you can hone, develop, and express as a true personal strength. And that's certainly what he did. It's as if Neptune allows an escape for this kind of sensitivity in somebody with a Sun opposite Neptune. And that escape, in a very healthy way, actually becomes the artistic expression. Now, in an unhealthy way, unfortunately, we get just very addictive tendencies. And of course, that was a very big part of his life too. And if you watch the movie, you'll see how that's highlighted. But going back to his natal chart with the Sun, Mercury, Mars, this was, again, somebody who really could tap into his creative imagination, and then with the Mars being right there too, take action into bringing it into the world. What's also interesting about his chart is that he's got this Scorpio Moon, and I want to read a little bit about the Scorpio Moon, and this is from astrostyle.com. And before I do, just to talk about the moon, that is the way we express ourselves emotionally on an instinctual level. And you can hear his Scorpio Moon in a lot of his lyrics. He talks about shooting people, and a lot of it is very heavy dialogue, He also loved to wear black. That was like his thing. That was his look. And you'll also see in the movie that he received a lot of fan mail from prisoners, which inspired him at one point to go and have a live performance at Folsom Prison. And that basically became a really successful album of his. So this is this Scorpio Moon, he's definitely kind of edgy, and he really taps into his emotions and feelings, but from a really kind of scorpionic, deep, cathartic way. So this reads, if you have a Scorpio Moon, your deepest emotions and desires take on the qualities of the sign Scorpio: mysterious, intense, and trustworthy. Intensity, mystery, seduction. If you were born with the moon in Scorpio or the 8th house, and his moon, by the way, is not only in Scorpio, but it's also in the 8th house, your emotions are complex and mysterious. The moon is in its fall in this sign, which is said to be one of its most challenging placements in the zodiac. It's true that your feelings come with a strong current, and one that's been known to pull you into an obsessive undertow. But thanks to this deep diving lunar placement, you don't mind going way down there. Anything too surface, light, or superficial won't hold your interests. Scorpio in the 2nd house are associated with transformations, and you'll see in the movie he definitely faced a lot of demons in his life, especially around addiction, and he did become the Phoenix Rising. Like the Phoenix Rising from the ashes, you must touch the fire of destruction before you can elevate to the illuminated heights of awareness. Tough emotional lessons, you'll weather plenty of them in this lifetime. It's part of your process and how you develop your superpowers as an empath, mystic, counselor, or guide. So we can clearly see his Scorpio Moon. And you'll see also in the movie, he gets into these fits of rage where he destroys bathrooms and such because he just gets overpowered by his deep, intense feelings. Now, going back to his chart, if you look at that Scorpio Moon, it's nicely trined that Pisces stellium. So that's good. It means it blends with that Sun, Mercury, and Mars. And I would say that really helped him even more to make contact with his emotions and feelings and get them out in a creative way. But what's also interesting is that Scorpio Moon squares his Saturn. It's like a 7-degree orb, but it's still a square. Saturn's also another symbol of the father. So this could be another signature of just having difficulty with relationship with the father. But even more so, the moon can be related to our self-image. When you have Saturn and the moon together in a chart, that self-worth energy can be hindered because of that moon. You're very self-critical. And again, that may have started with the father, but then you kind of take it on moving forward. And I have here something to read about that too from horoscopejoy.com. And they write, those having the moon square Saturn in their natal chart are very likely to create a lot of problems as far as their own relationships are going because they're awkward and lonelier than others. Many of the emotional challenges they're going through as adults are a result of what happened to them when they were little. Those of them who had a confusing and sad childhood will get to suffer from depressive episodes and have feelings of unexplained guilt or anger as adults. Because again, the moon is the container of the emotions. So it kind of deals with how we instinctively respond to the world based on our past, based on our history, based on our home life, really, growing up and what we were exposed to. All this may be the cause of one of their parents being unemotional and detached from the family life, which made these people feel ignored, neglected, unattractive, and unloved. In this case, their family wasn't there for them during the emotional crisis of their childhood. They may encounter serious problems in their behavior as adults. Whether they've imagined or not that their parents didn't offer them too much attention or support, they may have had no respect for the world they're living in and society as a whole, also for the people who raised them and others who've offered them mentoring. This problem of theirs can be solved if their parents and teachers are offering them enough attention and respect. Romance or a strong friendship can make them feel like they're belonging somewhere and to someone, which could be highly beneficial for them. And in the movie, you can see his relationship with his father never really got any better. His father, even in the midst of Johnny's success, still criticized him, put him down, was probably jealous of him at that point. But John did find happiness in his relationship with June Carter Cash. And I want to go back to his chart to talk about that. He's got some interesting things relating to his Venus, which is his loving energy or his loving nature. He ended up with June Carter Cash after he got sober. She helped him with that. And they both had marriages and children. But then they remained together for the rest of their lives. And it was really a beautiful love story. But you can see in his chart that he approached this relationship very much how it manifests in his chart. And I'll explain why. So here he's got this Venus in Aries. You know, that's a Venus, loving nature, that's going to go after things. And for a long while, he was pursuing June, and she just wasn't going to have it because of various things. He was still married. She was still married. You know, it just wasn't the right fit for her. She was trying to be very responsible and kind of fit into the social norms of the day, which were sort of like being straight-laced and not, creating problems, by having affairs and things like that. Although at some point in the movie, they did have an affair before they actually settled down together. But it was quite a ways down after Johnny had been pursuing her for a while. So anyway, Venus in Aries, he's going to go after what he wants. And then Uranus is right here too. And Uranus is something unusual, something different. And cathartic, Uranus wants to break free and break through. And so that really kind of came through once he kind of got to the point in his life where he just realized he could no longer kind of, live with his current situation with his first marriage. But also this speaks to sort of, because this is in the first house of how we bring ourselves out into the world. And he was very much like that. He was kind of an odd bird, he was the man in black, and he just was really kind of driven to express not only himself creatively, but very much in this sort of different and unique way. And he did that. You can see that in in the type of music he was producing for that time. But that Venus, Uranus in his chart is squared his Pluto in Cancer. And Pluto rules the sign of Scorpio. So Pluto is all about that sort of stuff that's hidden beneath the surface and that, our shadow, and it's about compulsion and intense desire. And so this speaks somewhat additionally, on top of all of his Piscean stuff, to his addictive issues. Because when you've got Venus squared Pluto, especially in relationships, you are going to be driven by compulsive desires. But you're also, if you're thinking about Venus as what brings us pleasure, that too is going to add to addictive tendencies because you're indulging in the excessive use of things that bring you pleasure. So I have something written here brought up here about Venus squared Pluto from the astrologer erichughes.com, and this is what he says. Venus in square aspect to Pluto is potentially difficult, which demands that you take the high road or else you can slip into the darker possibilities of this planetary combination. The Venus-Pluto square is most noticeable in romantic relationships. There can be intense emotions that can feel overwhelming due to either you or your partner displaying controlling or manipulative behavior. These two planets can result in arguments that can get out of hand and ultimately feel brutal as each partner goes for the other's emotional wounds. Hence, the darker path that you must be aware of is this possibility of power struggles that can potentially sabotage the relationship. With any Pluto aspect, there's always the challenge of using power appropriately. The square aspect represents the need for learning lessons that are focused upon us in some way. Venus is symbolic of love and money. Therefore, issues centered on who has more control in the relationship around big decisions, money, and sex can come up in a very powerful way. With this in mind, it's imperative that you don't try to throw your weight around in the relationship just so you can have more to say in the affairs of the relationship. Ideally, relationships should be about a beautiful give and take where the energy flows between each of you in a complementary fashion. Any effort made to be more powerful than your partner will harm the relationship in the same way that a virus will eventually corrupt a computer. On the other hand, giving your power away to avoid conflict just to keep your partner happy is a recipe for disaster. You end up betraying yourself and losing your sense of selfhood and respect. Don't even think about going there. Your love for yourself should be just as strong as your love for your partner. So the big lesson of Venus squared Pluto, stand in your own power. Don't let anyone control, manipulate, or make unreasonable demands of you. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Likewise, use power to uplift and inspire yourself and your partner equally. Oftentimes, this is a tough lesson because Pluto indicates that we can have a primitive fear that if we don't get our way or we don't submit, we won't be safe or we won't even survive in some way. If you find yourself feeling this way, just take a step back and do your best to detach from emotional thinking as much as you can. Are you really seeing things clearly? Or are you in the grips of this intense fear that all will be lost if you don't get your way or if you don't give in to your partner's demands? Venus-Pluto energy in its highest form is symbolic of the redeeming power of a very pure love. It's about loving your partner and yourself with heart, mind, and soul. It's about growing more together through the adversity you face together. It's about two hearts that face the challenges of life as one. Ultimately, it's about true equality with a love transformed by fire. So you can really see this energy in his chart with his first relationship. They fought a lot, and he would say things to her like, I've given you everything you want. You've given you this house. I've done everything you've wanted. So it was a lot about like the material things. But really, he was kind of deeply in love with somebody else and just had a difficult time kind of getting to that truth of his life, So this is part of the Venus squared Pluto energy. Also, just because I'm realizing it here, his Venus is trined his Jupiter. And his Jupiter's in on the cusp of the end of the fifth house But it's still in that 5th house of creativity, and it's in the sign of Leo. Leo, the performer, wanting to be seen on the stage. So to have Venus trine Jupiter just gives you a nice kind of uplifting vibe. So even though he was this moon in Scorpio and this addicted Pisces energy, he still had this Venus, this loving nature in his 1st house of how he brings himself out into the world in this kind of quirky way, trined his Jupiter, abundance, prosperity, growth, luck, in the sign of Leo, being seen on the stage, the world stage. So he kind of always landed on his feet, so to speak, with this aspect in his chart. And just to note, he had a Sagittarius midheaven. And again, this Jupiter in Leo rules that Sagittarius midheaven. And that Jupiter is supported nicely by that trine to the Venus and trine to the Uranus. It's also squared that moon widely in Scorpio, which just could give sort of like an excess drama to his intense Scorpio emotions, you know, so it just sort of amplified that part of him at times, and you'll definitely see that in the movie. I think that's about everything I want to share about the chart at this time. I just really, again, have enjoyed Johnny Cash and his music, and if anybody also likes him, one of, I believe it was his last album that he made, he did a lot of covers, one by Nine Inch Nails, one by U2, so if it interests anybody, I would encourage you to go look it up. And, you know, even through his last album, you could just hear, you know, his not heavy heart, but just his ability to tap into the emotion, the collective emotion, which is very Piscean, through his lyrics and through his delivery. You know, and you just hear him sing, and you can identify, you can relate with the feelings and the emotions that he's portraying if you've ever gone through anything intense in your life as well. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you like my channel, and I will see you at the next video. Take care.